What's good, y'all? Welcome back to It's Too Early in the Morning, and I am unable to sleep. I actually was not reading, I was watching reels about how artificial light and the 9 to 5 workday have influenced our sleep, and apparently people just woke up in the middle of the night and then like 12, 1 in the morning, and they slept in two like 4 hour blocks, and then they would just like eat, hang out, chill during this time. So it's actually not the craziest thing in the world to like wake up, even though that people say that it's bad to not be able to sleep through the night. It's artificial. Like this is a routine that we have developed, us as humans, as humanity, relative to our living circumstances, which have changed because you don't rely on the sun for the only source of light. Like we have lights now, and people can now stay up and still interact. Versus like when it was dark, there was like nothing you can do. You wouldn't do anything once the sun went down. And there's another study people did on indigenous tribes, and they noted that there wasn't that much downtime. I think it was less than an hour of time where nobody in the tribe was awake. And people speculate this is an evolutionary mechanism to make sure that there was somebody always able to watch for the tribe because like there are nocturnal animals, there's predators out there. So something to think about in regards to sleep. I think I'm in that area of developing my channel where I like all the main things that I originally had, like the ideas that I really wanted to talk about, they've been exhausted for a while. Like I think that was like what the D1 Crashout was. Like there was these a lot of things that I felt very strongly about that I really felt like people should know and that I wanted to talk about them. Or I just like kept having this recurring conversation with different people about like the same pieces of advice, and they felt self-explanatory to me, but people just wouldn't do them. And I'm slowly gaining more sympathy as like my life is getting more difficult and it's not all sunshine and rainbows. But the bottom line is I no longer have those things that I'm like super certain about. That I've lived my life, I have my lived experience that I feel super solid about. I'm like, I feel like everybody should be doing this. I'm like, no, I'm now in a much more speculative time and I haven't touched that thing that I really like talking about, like the really solid advice, like a good comparison is now what I would be doing. A lot more effort, but like a this or that video or the D1 crash outs of like something which I feel super solid about. I don't have those anymore. I have a lot of things that I'm like, I'm still learning and living, and this is just how I feel in the moment, but I don't know if it's going to be the thing that like feels right for me like, forever versus other things feel very solid. And the correct answer is you'll never truly know, right? I'm like, you'll have friends, you'll make friendships, and you'll feel like that they'll last forever, and then things change, people change, nothing is set in stone, people get divorced. Like it's not a skill that people have to consistently be good at identifying how things are going to change over time. Like if we knew that, we would, be really, everyone would be really good at the stock market and everyone would be able to profit from it. But that's a zero sum game, and people, well, let's just say somebody has to be the loser in that department. And if everybody was super good at it, then we'd all be winners, supposedly, or there'd just be really strict competition. But all of that besides the point. And actually, not really. It kind of brings me to the point of this video. I think I'm gonna call it like "Bring Back Hating," but it really pisses me off, especially because I live in a generation of people that are more particularly sensitive, and it's in one sense a good thing. People could say because of the ADHD, worsened attention spans. It's because people have lower tolerance for, let's say, injustice because with the greater information age, you have a really high accountability. But that also makes people very fearful, right? Because there is no making mistakes without accountability. Like, everything can be recorded, people can be documented really quickly. It's really easy to send out information, and which means it's really easy to send out misinformation. It's really easy to make people misinformed because since we have this technology that allows us to hear so many people's opinions, we just make an ensemble of opinions which may not be our own. It's just super easy to absorb a bunch of information from other people, and because of that, it we really just have this urge to be right. Like I feel like a lot of people in my generation, they just fear being wrong. They have this like this feeling that things have to be correct, because you have something which can always tell you like to be correct. You have a browser. There's no excuse for you to not be super well informed on things, but because we are now able to understand nuance so much more, it's really hard to take a stance on something, to argue something, because you have to be really well informed on it, and you have the capacity to be well informed on it. And that you look at that and it's like, that's a lot of effort, right? That's the hard part for us as humans, as individuals, is you look at something and you understand how difficult it might be to do something, and like, wow, everything that I do seems like it's going to be a lot of effort to reach the accuracy, the amount of nines, so to speak. I don't know if people have heard of that. It's like 2 nines is 99%, 3 nines is 99.9%. That's very much a software thing. But there's just always this level of effort and this capacity that we have, that we're like, okay, I have this much capacity to work on things, and I know that I should just start them, but I don't want to have to work on everything to this degree just to be able to like have a stance or have an opinion on something. I want to be able to be uninformed. I want to not have to be so accurate and not just get put on the internet and be like, oh wow, look at this person, they're so stupid, they got this one thing wrong, or they had this one inaccuracy and they didn't cite their source and they should have cited their source. I'm like, this is the scary part about accountability. There's so much visibility now, and it makes it very intimidating to do anything at all. And then also you'll see people who are judging people from like their past, like, oh, they were like 10, 18, 6 years old, and they said this one controversial thing because they lived in a little echo chamber in which they kind of just absorbed the opinions of the people around them. Like, that's what everyone does. But because they want a position of power, and everyone's going to see your lived experience from any age as informing of you now, there's just no undoing that. And that sucks. And that's just where we're at as a society, where I'm like, you just never can undo the things that have been done. There's just always this visibility, and you're always going to be judged unfairly. And that sucks. You know? That sucks. And I think that's why you see, like, it's hard. Like, bullying still exists, of course, and harassment still exists, of course, but people are fearing it more. People are getting way more pushback on it, and that is a good thing. It is a good thing to keep people accountable and to keep people visible, even if it results in a very dystopian society in which people fear doing a little bit of anything. People fear visibility, and I think that's where we saw like the nonchalant era, so to speak, where like the whole thing is like, people care about things and people work towards things, but showing that you care about those things and being open and being visible and being vulnerable, like, those weren't good things. People fear being seen as a failure or showing visible failure way more than the actual failure itself. People don't care too much about like failing. People recognize that things don't have to be perfect, but they feel like they have to be within relative to other people. And like, someone that's like, oh, you're always seeing other people's highlight reels, all that stuff. So then you saw all this push of advice of people just saying, just try things, just do things. Don't be so scared of what other people think of you. I'm like, ultimately they have no control over you and your life, and to a certain extent that's true. Unless you're a politician, and then that sucks for you because you need people. And honestly, all people need people, but the amount of people that you need for each person, it very much varies relative to like what you're trying to achieve. But in general, it's, not good to burn bridges. I think that's something which I feel rather firm on. It's like, it's not a good thing to cut off a bunch of people and to be super unhappy or unforgiving or unlikable or whatever, because I'm like, you need to interact with other people. Like, society fundamentally functions with multiple people interacting together, supporting each other. So just some food for thought. But yeah. Whoopies. And what we've actually seen that reflected in the way that people interact, or at least what I've noticed, is that we have corporate jargon, we have the LinkedIn slang, we have people outsourcing their thoughts to AI, and they, instead of like wanting to be creative or take a risk, they just want everything to be objectively correct. And the other thing is, like, we're seeing a lot of agreeability. You're seeing a lot of people that not only don't think for themselves, but also refuse to be negative to other people. If you've ever been like PR trained in the US, you might have learned something called the sandwich method, where you say a positive thing and then you say the negative thing, which actually needs feedback, and then you say another positive thing. something which you will learn about humans is that you do very well in a feedback loop. Like whenever you train, you want to get alignment on what is quote unquote right or what you need to improve on really quickly. And that's the best way for you to improve quickly, is just to do that, to have your whole improvement loop done quickly. And when you don't have that feedback, when you don't have that alignment on what you should be doing or how you should be improving or being more robust by having more feedback, you are missing out on a lot of learning, right? I'm like, if you're doing a bunch of math problems and you get the answer wrong every single time, you're not learning anything, right? You're learning how to do the problem wrong. And until you learn how to do the problem right, knowing how to do the problem wrong doesn't help you. And you could spend a lot of time doing something wrong, in which a lot of it may not be particularly useful for you. And you'll have persistence for sure. And you'll have this like nice happy dopamine feedback loop where you're doing things right like all the time. You feel like you're doing things right all the time, but realistically you're doing everything wrong. And that's the other part of it where I'm like, we're missing that negativity where people just can't tolerate that feedback. People are missing out on the learning because they can't tolerate feedback. Like, that's super alarming. And I feel like, at least from the education perspective, this is something that I care about. You need to learn. Right? Like, you as a human, you need to learn about the world and the environment. And ideally, with the whole point of all the information is that you can build on the information prior. So you shouldn't be super attached to always getting something right. But you should be documenting your progress. You should be able, your work should be observable. And maybe that's what the visibility is about. Maybe that's what the accountability is about. But we need to be able to handle like a little bit of negativity. You need to be able to handle being wrong. You need to be able to handle not being perfect. And a lot of people understand that, but it's not reflected within them and their lives. They're like, oh, I feel like I have to be perfect. I feel like everything has to go right the first time. And I feel like there's always this punishment that weighs on me. And that's honestly like pretty fair. So, yeah. What does that actually mean? And to me, I think it was very well articulated by my father. And he told me, it's like, we wanted to build you up we wanted to give you feedback. We wanted to give you a little bit of pressure, motivate you, but without breaking you down, So I don't want to say that I got bullied growing up. I felt a lot of pressure. I think a lot of people felt a lot of pressure. And honestly, I still do to an extent, but I've been able to alleviate some of it by, my good financial situation that is not a result of my own efforts. But I don't fear. Well, I guess I did. I feared the failure a lot. I did sports. I didn't want to let people down. I felt like all these other people were ahead of me and just knew the right things. I was in environments where I felt like everybody knew the right thing, and they just all had these like really strong visions and ambition. And I'm like, all of it seemed like beautiful and sweet, right? I just felt like I was behind. And the other part of that is I got a lot of critique, and for some reason, I was told that I was someone that people like looked up to. I was naturally gifted athletically. I always did good in my classes. I was just that classic story where I'm like, it seemed like everything was sweet. And honestly, compared to college, I was not studying that much. I didn't need to work particularly hard to be able to learn, which like made it also seem like I was like quote unquote a better person. So you have the good grades, you seem like a good person on the outside, you come from a good background, you always super giving. I love the acts of service, me personally. But eventually I started getting a personality and I like got super transparent with the people that like I didn't like the way that they acted or how they presented themselves. And I'm like, I don't like the way that you're operating. And bro, what's wrong with my replay? Hello? But oh, whatever. I'll fix it later. But then I started get some pushback. Like, people don't like you as much. You get more feedback where people I'm not a fan of getting that negativity. You're not viewed on as highly anymore. Like maybe you still get that respect from people because you are in a position better than them, but it's like that no one's envious of you if they're doing better than you. It's like you're never gonna get bullied by someone who's doing better than you. So like that was weird, to see someone that like in a similar position to you, and then they're giving you critiques and they're giving you feedback, and like that's how I wanted it to be. At least to me, I had this like aha moment. I had this realization moment that among my friends, I wanted them to push back on me. I didn't want to be this like perfect person. I didn't want to be this idealized person. Like I wanted people to understand that I'm trying these things for the first time in my life as well, and I'm always just making an educated guess on how I want to live and what is going to be best for me. And unfortunately, that didn't really come across. People just thought that I had things figured out, and that bothered me. And it's honestly still happens in college. Like I think I've said this a million times, but I have a friend who has a 4.0 GPA, and I'm envious of him because in the very traditional academic sense, he's doing fantastic. I think he's a better candidate for research labs than me, all that good stuff, and he's really good at learning. To him, he goes home, he plays Rocket League every day. He's still around his hometown friends. He still lives at home, and he feels like I have it figured out. I have a house with some friends, and well, we're renting. We don't actually own the house, and I have all this club work on my resume, and I have the research, and I work with faculty, and it looks like I'm in a better position than him. Honestly, we're probably both going to end up getting jobs out of college. I don't feel like I'm particularly better than him, and if anything, I feel like he's better than me. But he feels like I have it figured out, and I feel like he has it figured out. And it's just an example of like, one, you'll never be happy, but two, it's like it's dependent on your success criteria. And that's the thing about like the bullying. It's like someone's gonna bully you for being short, something that's out of your control. Someone might bully you for being ugly, something which also is mostly outside of your control. And someone may bully you for like being out of shape. And if you're like on a soccer team, that is feedback for you to be like, hey, you need to get in shape, because you're not able to support the team in the way that you need to because you're tired. And maybe you perform really well for the first 5 minutes, and then, well, you don't. Maybe people bully you for your skills, like, oh bro, what is that touch? And that's also feedback for you. It's like, oh yeah, that was a bad touch, but that doesn't mean like a breakdown and everything's terrible. It just means that like these people are here, whether you realize it or not, to enforce the status quo that is there for your improvement. I'm like, there's a certain level that you need to be at, and we have this expectation that you perform on that level, and you're on that team for a reason, to not only to improve, because people believe that you have the capacity to improve, and that is significant. you know and that's kind of what it's all about. It's like you need a little bit of pressure, you need a little bit of cortisol, which is stress hormone, to stay awake. Sorry, neurotransmitter. But you need a little bit of cortisol to stay awake, and people always like, oh, low cortisol, because cortisol is what stress is. And people also be like, oh, dopamine, you just want dopamine. But like too much dopamine and like everything's sweet, and you get nothing done. Like you need a little bit of stress and a little bit of dopamine from your feedback loop in order to not only stay awake but to improve. Like you can't just feel like everything is terrible, because you're never going to want to do that thing continually. I don't know if I sound crazy from this. So it's like you need both the negativity and the positivity, right? The quote unquote negativity is the cortisol, the stress, the thing that keeps you awake, the thing that motivates you to keep operating. The motivation is the dopamine, and the pressure is the stress. You need both, right? Because something recently for me, playing a lot of pickleball. Friend hates pickleball. He hates exercise. But one day he came out and he did particularly well. And he's like, wow, it's really fun when like I was in the mode, when I was focused. And I'm just like, yeah, passion, enjoyment, happiness, it follows skill in doing well. You need to do the hard parts. You need to struggle. You need to try. You need to fail, and before you get to be getting good at something, where you get the dopamine, you get the happiness, and then it becomes more enjoyable. And the threshold is going to keep getting higher. You're probably never going to be satisfied with the person you are and how good you are at something and like your hobbies, etc. But you can keep working towards something and keeping improving and keep getting better at something. And that's your dopamine work. And as you see yourself get better, you will get that dopamine and you'll get that positive feedback loop. But you also have the stress of knowing that you can always get better. This continual improvement. And that's the whole thing. So going back to growing up, it's like, yeah, sure, it sucked at the time, where At least my parents at times made me feel like I was never good enough. And like my teammates and my friends never made me feel like I was never good enough. There was always aspects of somebody else's life in which I wanted, you know? But you need that. And it might have come across in the form of bullying depending on who you are, and it might have come across as negativity depending on who you are, but you need that feedback in order to improve. You need that stress in order to have that pressure to improve. And you also need the happy moments where people encourage you, where you get that external validation, where you are happy and enjoying your life in order to improve. So that's the whole idea. And at least where I see it as an educator is I'm like, you want to make an environment where people fail quickly, where people learn quickly, right? Where they are enjoying their life and their efforts, like, period. you know? And you also don't want to make it feel like that they're wasting their time. I'm like, my resources are finite. I don't want you to sit here doing nothing. Just do something. And yeah. So that's something which I find really alarming, is when people can't handle any negativity, any feedback at all. I'm like, you need to be able to handle at least some. And beyond that, don't fear the failure. Don't fear the visibility either. It's okay to fail. And I think one of the most impactful quotes that I've been told is like, as long as you have tomorrow, no one can tell you how your story goes. Right? Like, how could you possibly write an ending to a story which hasn't finished writing? So, that's about it from me. I think this was a video that I procrastinated on making for a very long time because I wanted it to go a certain way. I really wanted it to have this, like, tie-in to, like, maybe you got bullied growing up, or maybe you always felt this pressure, or maybe you were perfect and then you weren't, and then you felt like your world was falling apart, and had touch on all these different aspects. But like, realistically, I'm just like, you have this feedback loop in your brain, and then you have this life which, whether you, however you want to perceive it or not, where it breaks you down or builds you up, it is designed to feed into that feedback loop, and ultimately is there to service you and your benefit. Even if the people around you don't share that intention, you can spin it however you want. So yeah, but that's about it for me, and take care. Enjoy.